Title: The Midnight Game. It was supposed to be a silly dare, just something to kill time at the cabin while the storm raged outside. 4 friends, Lena, Marcus, Ellie, and Tom, sat huddled around the flickering fireplace. The windows rattled as the wind howled, and the snow fell in thick sheets, piling high against the doors. They'd come for a weekend getaway, but the blizzard trapped them. Lena, always the instigator, had brought it up. "Have you guys ever heard of the Midnight Game?" Ellie shook her head, already uneasy. "What's that?" "It's an old ritual," Lena explained, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "It's supposed to summon, well, something. No one really knows what it is, but they say if you play, you have to follow the rules exactly. If you don't, you'll regret it." Marcus snorted. "Sounds like a bunch of nonsense." But Tom, ever the skeptic, was intrigued. "What are the rules?" Lena pulled out her phone and read from an online forum she'd saved. "You need a piece of paper, a candle, and a drop of blood. At exactly midnight, you write your full name on the paper, prick your finger, and let a drop of blood fall on your name. Then, you turn off all the lights, place the paper in front of the door, and knock 22 times, with the last knock happening exactly at midnight." "And then what?" Ellie asked, her voice shaky. "Then you light the candle and walk around the house. You have to keep moving until 3:33 a.m., and whatever you do, don't let the candle go out. If it does, the Midnight Man is close, and you have to surround yourself with a circle of salt to survive." Tom grinned. "This is ridiculous." "Let's do it," Marcus said, already standing up. He was always the first to take on a challenge, no matter how crazy. The others hesitated, but in the end, the storm outside left them with no better options for entertainment. They gathered their supplies, lit a single candle, and waited for the clock to hit midnight. Lena went first, writing her name and pricking her finger, watching the drop of blood stain the paper. One by one, they followed. By 11:59, they had the paper set in front of the door. The cabin plunged into darkness, except for the single flickering flame. When midnight struck, Lena knocked 22 times, her knuckles growing raw against the wooden door. As the last knock echoed in the silence, the atmosphere in the cabin shifted. The wind seemed to stop howling outside, replaced by a suffocating stillness. "Okay," Lena whispered. "Now we walk." They began to move around the small cabin, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. For the first few minutes, everything was fine. The only sound was their footsteps on the creaky wooden floors. But then, they heard it. A low, almost imperceptible shuffling, as though something was moving just out of sight, following them. It was soft at first, barely noticeable, but soon it grew louder, closer. Ellie was the first to panic. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Stop it," Marcus hissed. "You're just scaring yourself." But Tom froze. "Did you hear that? That scraping sound?" It was coming from the door, where they had placed the paper. A slow, deliberate scratching, like nails on wood. "Guys, this isn't funny anymore," Ellie whimpered, her eyes wide with fear. She clutched her candle tighter, her hand shaking. "We're almost through an hour. Just keep moving," Lena urged, though her confidence was waning. She could feel it now, too, something watching them, something shifting in the darkness just beyond the candlelight. Suddenly, Marcus's candle flickered and went out. "No," he shouted, fumbling to relight it, but his hands were trembling too much. The darkness closed in around him, suffocating and cold. "Salt!" Lena screamed. "Make a salt circle!" But it was too late. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, impossibly thin, with long, spindly limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally. Its face was obscured in shadow, but the gleam of sharp teeth shone through the darkness. Marcus let out a strangled scream as the figure lunged at him, dragging him into the blackness. The others could only listen in horror as his screams faded into nothingness. Ellie dropped her candle in panic, the flame extinguishing as it hit the floor. "No, no, no," she sobbed, frantically reaching for the salt. But before she could draw a circle, the same shadowy figure appeared again, closer this time. Tom grabbed Lena's arm. "Run!" They sprinted through the cabin, the last candle barely flickering in Lena's hand. Behind them, the shadows twisted and writhed, the air thick with the sound of scraping claws and guttural growls. They made it to the kitchen, barricading the door behind them. Lena's candle was burning low, the wax nearly melted down to her fingers. "We can't stop moving," she panted, her heart racing. We have to keep going until 3:33. Tom glanced at the clock on the wall. It was only 1:15. As they stood there, the door rattled violently, as though something was trying to force its way inside. The handle twisted slowly at first, then violently, as the door buckled under the weight of whatever was outside. The candle flame sputtered, barely clinging to life. Lena held it up, her hands shaking, tears streaming down her face. "We're not going to make it," Tom whispered, his voice hollow. The door burst open. The shadows rushed in. The candle went out, and the darkness consumed them.